Yep, that's right. You guys didn't think I was gonna skip out on talking about this, did you? So, I watched the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie, and I'm finally here to talk about it. And as you can probably imagine, I've quite a few thoughts on it, so please take a seat. And I'm going to give you my full spoiler review of the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie. Now, I'll be honest, I was genuinely really looking forward to this movie. Not necessarily because I'm some super fan of the series. I don't even know if I could really call myself a fan. I really like the classic games, but I don't really care as much for everything after Sister Location with this series. But I was still very interested in seeing how they were going to adapt the second game into a film, almost more so than the first. So I've seen the movie twice in theaters at this point. I went first with my friend Luna, and then I went a week later with my sister and a couple of her friends, so I should tell you right away, it was not a bad watch. I'm glad that I watched it. It was a good time. But before I fully get into it though, I'd like to do a quick refresher of some of my thoughts on the first movie. So, I actually really liked the first FNAF movie. Now, I will admit that may partially be because I walked into it with very low expectations, but I thought it was a genuinely pretty solid video game adaptation. The characters were pretty likable, visually it was very impressive, the score was great, and ultimately it was just pretty nostalgic and fun. I liked how relatively grounded the story was, and I love that it was very self-aware and meta, enough to be funny, but it still took itself seriously when it mattered. And I remember saying in my initial video about it that it seems like the kind of movie that I would appreciate more on rewatch. And now that I've seen it a few times, I can say that parts of it did get better, though other parts of it definitely did get worse. I do have more critiques for it now, but honestly, I still stand by pretty much everything I said in my initial review. I really like this movie. So going into the sequel, I was really excited to see how they'd handle it. And now here we are, and I'm back in the theater, and I'm about to watch the FNAF 2 movie, and we're ready. And I want to start by talking about what's immediately most obvious about this movie, which is it looks really, really good. The blend of practical effects and CGI are simply fantastic in this movie. The animatronics and the costumes and the makeup and the set design all just look incredible across the board. I don't think I can imagine any of these designs looking better in live action. You can really feel this raw weight to all the animatronics, the way they move, the sound design is perfect. You can just hear how heavy and big these robots are. It's really great. And then in particular, I really loved how the puppet looked in this movie, and especially its movements. I just wish we got to see more of the puppet itself, because the way it would kind of slither around with all these lurching movements were super, super creepy, although there just really weren't enough scenes with it. Additionally, I was very, very impressed by Matthew Lillard's performance as William Afton in this movie. This is another character that I just really wanted to see more of because every scene he was in, he just absolutely stole the show. The Spring Bonnie suit was easily my favorite costume design in the movie, and they definitely knew what they were doing with this casting. In the first movie, I said we didn't get quite enough time to see Matthew Lillard fully play up his character as Afton, and while we still don't get too much screen time with him here, at least the scenes that he does get in this movie, he's got some insane aura. Anyway, this movie overall is just a perfect example of how amazing practical effects can be. You know, when we were in the theater, we got that AI Coca-Cola ad, and it's like looking at that and then just looking at this movie, it's just night and day. This is real movie magic. And for the record, my favorite drink has always been Pepsi Zero. So obviously, the visuals are great, but of course, also like the first movie, they make it a priority to include a bunch of fan service and references and stuff, and I think it's cute. There are of course surprise appearances from characters that I really didn't expect to see, like Henry Emily and Circus Baby, or even Shadow Bonnie, which was very surprising to me, but I thought it was very cool how they were done. I like how they're kind of taking different parts from the original lore and just telling the story in a different way. The Matt, Pat, and Corey cameos were pretty funny, and of course the meme sound effect with the Freddy plush was probably the best joke in the movie. I genuinely think there was so much love and passion put into this movie, and I'm going to talk more about that later. But for now, I want to get into the actual story and characters. So, in both these movies, I actually really like Josh Hutcherson's character as Mike. I think having this main character who suffers from PTSD relating to his brother is a great idea. The FNAF series has always been about these themes of the past haunting the present, and having the protagonist start out as this traumatized guy who's constantly obsessed with trying to fix his past was a really perfect idea, and it led to a solid character arc. I think his relationship with his sister is really cute, and I like how they're portrayed in this movie for the most part. And then there's Vanessa, and I like the idea of her suffering from her own PTSD here in the second movie as well. It makes her a way more interesting character, and it makes her relationship with Mike feel a lot more natural. Unfortunately, that plotline is kind of just dropped in the second half of the movie, but there are some pretty cool uses of it. Like the scene in Vanessa's cycling class, that was really good and eerie. I really wish we got to see more of that kind of thing. Same with her whole dream sequence. It's pretty well executed, and I like how they're kind of setting up dreaming early on as this significant narrative device. I'm hoping we get to see some more FNAF 4 elements in another movie. Of course, the best part of the movie was the whole opening sequence with Charlotte trying to save this kid from William Afton in the spring bonnie suit. That was a fantastic sequence, and it was really creepy intense, but it leads us into this really weird creative decision for Charlotte's character. Much like a lot of the movie, the puppet as a character is not well written at all. It seriously brings down so much of the movie overall. So, the puppet's main motivation is specifically that she hates parents because none of the parents were there to help her when she died. This is just so stupid, and the whole setup for this backstory is just so ridiculously contrived. The whole movie is only relying on this incredibly specific and forced setup at the beginning, where she runs around begging for help and every parent in the restaurant is just super unrealistically mean and dismissive to her for no reason at all. And then just the concept of her blaming all parents instead of Afton, the guy who actually killed her, it's just such a forced and shallow motivation. I remember the puppet in the games being much more of a sympathetic character. I like the idea of the puppet being an antagonist, but I wish her motivation wasn't so silly. Not to mention, the way it works in this movie is that the puppet can wirelessly control all of the animatronics individually. And that was kind of a weird choice, because it means that the puppet doesn't really have any interactions with the missing children's incident from the first movie. The MCI doesn't really have any significance to the plot in this one. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this movie's writing. Not only is the movie just not really scary at all, but there isn't much atmosphere or even a sense of stakes throughout the entire runtime. There's just so much stuff in this movie that I cannot take seriously in the slightest. There's a ton of dialogue that sounds super unnatural and awkward. The plot of the entire movie feels so all over the place and just very cluttered, which I guess fits the feeling of FNAF 2, but come on. There are a lot of plot holes and just weird questions you start to ask about the movie logic that just really takes me out. There's all these different locations and no real consistent tone, so none of these scenes really build up any tension. You know, most of the fear in the main games comes from the claustrophobia. You'd feel trapped, like there's nowhere to run. But when I see these robots just walking around in the city with all these people, it just completely breaks my immersion. They look ridiculous like this. And here's the other thing. The toy animatronics have always been some of my least favorite sets of animatronics in the series. They're just so cutesy and not scary at all. I find it so hard to be intimidated by them, and that especially applies in this movie. The Wizards, on the other hand, are some of the best designs in the series, and I was really hoping we'd get more focus on the Withered animatronics, but they just kinda get shafted with one scene. The whole part where Mike is in the office and wearing the mask to avoid the Wizards is kinda cool, but it sucks that this is the only scene that uses these guys. I was pretty disappointed to see that the toys were the main set that we were following throughout the movie, and I just don't understand why. They're just not that scary. You know what else sucks? We barely even get any scenes of the robots actually tormenting or killing people. If I'm supposed to be intimidated by these things, I'm not. They just kind of walk around and don't do much for most of their time on screen. They're just slow and goofy. Later in the movie, we get these scenes where the toys are sneaking into people's houses across the city and attacking parents. And I just couldn't help but imagine how much cooler it would be if these were the Wizards instead. They look so good, and having these designs plus some better writing would have made these scenes so much scarier and cooler. I would be pretty terrified if I walked into my kitchen and saw Withered Bonnie standing there. Like, what exactly have these guys accomplished to convince me that they're an intimidating threat? And, okay, so there's this one scene in particular where you have Vanessa, she's driving a car, and Mengel's on top of it, trying to break in. And it's very over the top and chaotic, but it's like, okay, interesting. But then, Vanessa crashes the car into a house where Toy Freddy just so happens to be inside, and this actually manages to take out both animatronics at once. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of funny, but this is so absurd. We're not getting any other kind of actually scary or realistic moments that make you feel like there's some real stakes here, or make it feel like these characters should be even taken seriously. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm imagining if you told 8-year-old me that someday there's gonna be a Five Nights at Freddy's movie, I'd probably be like, whoa, okay, that sounds scary. I wouldn't be imagining Mengele on top of a car crashing into a house. Like, they have these two scenes that even in a vacuum are already not that great, and then they just collide and resolve each other like it's an episode of Smiling Friends. It's just silly. Moving on, they actually introduced Michael Afton in this movie as the main villain. This is another weird choice. They're kind of splitting Michael into two different characters as a protagonist and an antagonist, and either way, Michael is fine, but I just don't really understand what his motivation or even plan was. In the climax, he suddenly shows up and goes, by morning, half this town will be dead. And it's like, how? What are you talking about? You really think these 5 slow-moving robots are gonna be some unstoppable force that takes out the entire town? I can suspend my disbelief, but this movie is just too much of a mess. And it's just such a shame, because if the writing was actually good, the movie would be fantastic. We've got all these fantastic actors, and set designers, and costume designers, and artists, and everyone is giving it their all, and you can just tell how much everyone really cares. Everyone on the production team is trying so hard, but I just don't think Scott Cawthon is really pulling his weight as the main writer. You can literally just see all the actors just giving it their all and trying so hard to make it work, but there's only so much they can do with a script that's genuinely kind of embarrassing. Again, the movie was worth the watch. I had fun with it, but it just didn't really measure up to the potential that it had. I guess the last thing I want to say before wrapping up, hearing the Living Tombstones FNAF 2 song in the credits was super awesome indeed. And then they had this after credits scene, which I'll admit did get me really, really hyped for the next movie. And I'm definitely hoping that FNAF 3 is going to be the best movie so far. I'm looking forward to it, and I can't wait to be back here talking to you guys about it. Thank you all for watching, and good night.